The attraction of a big ego. I've had a whole lot of experiences lately, just little things, nothing major, dealing with or interacting with, I would say, unhealthily large, inflated egos. And yeah, again, nothing major, hasn't really caused me any problems or anything like that, but just made me think, you know, even though this is clearly unhealthy, why does that actually seem to attract some people? They're actually drawn to these large egos often. So that's going to be the topic of this episode of Chi Life. So we'll see how this vlog goes. I think I'll start by telling you just a little bit about some of these interactions, experiences I've had lately with some large egos. And then maybe a little bit about why this kind of inflated ego isn't healthy. And then a little bit about why I think that attracts people sometimes and why that's not healthy either. And then maybe a little bit distinguishing between a large ego and a healthy ego. Because as I've talked about before on this vlog channel, sometimes people go too far the other way and they think, they need to, you've probably heard the term, kill the ego, like, and have no ego. And that's not healthy either. I mean, it sounds good, particularly if you've had bad experiences with, an excessively inflated ego. You're like, oh, that's bad, maybe get rid of that altogether. It's not healthy either. Often it's a form of false ego that comes from that, and a way for people to think, now I'm better because I don't have an ego anymore. It's like, okay, you don't see the irony there. Anyway, so not entirely healthy. What we want is a healthy ego, one that's in balance, one that maintains a healthy sense of identity and so on. Anyway, I'll get into some of these experiences and we'll see how it goes. So again, just minor things. But one of the first ones that got me thinking a little bit about this topic, and look, these are all experiences I've had before, with people or different situations. I just had a whole string of them lately and made me think maybe this would be something interesting to talk about. So one of the first ones that got me thinking about this recently was bumping into someone and talking about different things, and then this person, I think it may have come up that I teach Qigong, I don't know, or it might have been that he just started talking about Qigong, and how he used to do Qigong. It was a long time ago now. And then immediately he got into this whole thing about, essentially his teacher being the best, the most authentic, yada, yada, yada. That kind of thing. It's like, it's this weird interaction where people want to start bragging and how it was the best. The guy doesn't even practice anymore. This is something from years ago. It was like, it was the absolute blah, blah, blah. Anyway. So that one got me started thinking, why did people get hooked into this way of thinking? Then some other ones that I've had lately as well, not just to do with Qigong, some parallel ones actually between Qigong and Kung Fu, and also yoga as well, where I've had conversations with people, or I've seen interactions between other people getting into things like, the lineage of their teacher, or the lineage of what they do, and like how essentially trying to make out my lineage is superior, it is the true, it is the most authentic. So some interesting conversation. This goes on in yoga as well. But one of the ones was in the context of Kung Fu. And it was quite interesting because there was this one person who was trying to make out that this other very senior, very respected teacher of a particular style was not teaching the true authentic version of this style of Kung Fu. Now that particular teacher, again, very senior, very respected, and acknowledged by the current grandmaster, officially recognized grandmaster of that style, who had been passed down this, through all the ceremonies and formally recognized. And this other person was trying to say, yeah, but their teacher, a claim to superiority, and they really knew better. And oh my goodness, crazy. Then what was another one? Oh, and then another one, and this was in the context of Qigong, and it was a Qigong teacher. This kind of blends into another topic as well that I might talk about more another time. But they were trying to say that, this particular type of practice, it's the only one way to do this practice. Other practices aren't this, or actually it wasn't a type of practice, it was a particular word they were using, and say, oh, all other things are not this. This is the only real way to do this. And it's like, you don't get to redefine the language for everyone else. You can say in your practice, this is what you're referring to. That's what you consider it to be. But the common usage of that word you're using is used for a whole lot more by everyone else in the world. But it's like, no, this is the one way. So yeah, a whole lot of things. Oh, one more. This is an interesting one. There's this young guy who lives where I live at the moment, and it's really interesting. He's young, so he's got some of the hubris of youth. Thinks he knows a lot more than he does, and there's lots of topics where his knowledge and understanding is here, but his confidence is here, and I've seen him at various points with a whole string of different people, and he'll be sitting down and talking to them about a topic, and he'll be laying out stuff about this topic like he is the ultimate authority on this topic. And it's like he really doesn't know much. He knows a tiny little bit, but he's talking like, yep, he knows it all. And which again doesn't surprise me necessarily. Young, a bit of arrogance, a bit of hubris, doesn't know better yet. You start to get more perspective over time as you get a bit older. You have a bit more experience. But what has surprised me is like watching these people listening to him sometimes, and they're clearly believing everything that he's saying. It's like, really? You're not like gonna just pass a common sense filter over some of this? But his level of confidence, my goodness, apparently for some people, that's enough. It's like he's saying it with such confidence, so they believe him. And I don't think any real harm has been done by that, but it's been interesting to observe. So anyway, all these different experiences got me thinking. So one, why is having that excessively inflated ego unhealthy? I think a few reasons. One, it can lead to conflict, unnecessary conflict between you and other people, right? And so that's in the example that I said about these in the context of martial arts, the context of kung fu, arguing about who's teaching the true, that can lead to serious conflict sometimes. That's not healthy. We don't need that. But more than that as well, I think having that excessively inflated ego acts as a restriction on gaining further understanding, because people get so stuck on what they think they know, they then close their minds to what they don't really know, and this can just stop them from learning more. And I guess even further to that, it can then get them stuck within dogma of doggedly persisting with something that clearly isn't helpful, clearly not taking them where they want to go, not giving them the benefits they want, possibly even harming them. But because of the ego-driven desire to think that they're right, to think that they know more than they do, and so on, leads to problems. So clearly some issues with that. And then there's the flip side of it. Well, so one more part of that, actually, it can lead you, and I guess this is where this is part of what creates conflict and so on as well, to really think that you're better than other people. And that's, going to create all sorts of weird, unhealthy dynamics as well. So that's one side. So for the person who has the excess ego, like, okay, these are problems, and maybe problems for people around them as well, why you'd want to avoid that. But then what about the flip side? What about the people who are attracted to these big egos? Why are they attracted to this? This is clearly dysfunctional. It's clearly unhealthy. Why do people get attracted to that? There must be something in it for them, in a sense, as well, to want to follow along with this. And I think there's several parts to this too. So one part of it is, just like I mentioned with this young guy, who, knowledge level here, confidence here, those people listening and believing, I think people like that sense of confidence. They like the idea that things can just be simple and someone knows, and in a way that means like, oh cool, I can just relax and go along with whatever you're saying because you're so confident, and I'll just go with that. And that can give, I guess, some level of comfort, some level of reassurance. Maybe in some situations that can be a helpful thing, to have confidence, to help people to feel more reassured. But again, if it's leading them down the wrong track, that's not going to help them, is it? But I think that's part of why sometimes people are attracted to that, like give them this confidence. Not great if it's false confidence though, eh? And then there's other things as well. I think a big part of why people get drawn to these outsized egos that cause problems is that it actually feeds into their ego as well. They get a little bit of reflected light in a way. You have this one person saying, I'm so great, I'm so amazing, I know the ultimate true, the authentic, the real, whatever it is. And then people go like, well, if I am connected to that person, in a way that makes me more special as well, that makes me more authentic, more real, more wise, more virtuous, whatever it is. And so they get this kind of passive boost to their own ego. And then they start arguing with other people, and again, it creates conflict and all this sort of thing. And it's quite an interesting sort of dynamic to see play out, where people get attracted to this false image. And I guess going back to this person who I ran into, and he was, the first example I gave, who he started talking about this qigong that he used to do years ago, and it was the greatest and this and that. I mean, listening to him talk, he had clearly done some qigong, but he clearly didn't really know what he was talking about. There were lots of basic terms and names that, look, I'm not a stickler for pronunciation. I think, particularly pronunciation in foreign languages, that can be challenging. But to not even be in the ballpark of sounding something like I had to really think, like, oh yeah, I think I know who he's talking about or what he's talking about, because he's butchering the words so badly. I was like, okay, and then misapplying different concepts. And like, oh dude, just really didn't have a clear understanding. But in his mind, it was the best, it was the greatest, and he needed to brag to me about it. That really, I guess probably in the past, held him back from gaining a better understanding and benefit from those practices, and certainly stopped him from looking further to discover, like, hey, this is just one practice, this is just one teacher, maybe there's a whole lot more I could learn, and get a bit more context and perspective, and it sort of closes the perspective. It's like, I've got this one thing and that makes me feel special, so I don't need to understand anymore. Interesting dynamic to see play out, like this boost to the ego, and then that stops them from gaining the true riches maybe that there are to discover. So what's a healthy expression of the ego, a healthy balance there? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with being attracted to people who are confident. Again, that can give some security, that, confidence can be a good thing. But false confidence, not so much. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being confident yourself. That's really healthy as well, being confident in what you do. So I guess particularly in the area of Qigong and Qigong practices, there's nothing wrong with thinking that the Qigong you do is good. There's nothing wrong with thinking you've got a great teacher. You're like, yeah, I really like my teacher. They're really good. They're really knowledgeable. They're really skillful even. That's all good. That's all healthy. And that's recognizing good things, appreciating them. Hey, that's awesome. Certainly appreciating the benefits that you get from your own Qigong. And thinking it's been amazing for me. Like, for me, it's been the best thing I've ever done. Like, cool, great. None of that is then restricting your further experience and understanding of the world around you and your ability to interact with other people and recognize that they have great things too. And I think that's where you maybe have a healthy ego and a healthy appreciation for other people. Yeah, you can recognize things that are great, things are good, fantastic. But it's when you get into the, this is the best, the only. I'm going to argue with you about how authentic this is because it can't be as authentic as mine. Even though I might have only ever seen one style, one thing, that now makes me the authority on all possible, versions of things or ways things can be done and so on. Anyway, interesting thing to, I don't know. Anyway, I had all of these things together. It seems to be a common trap. It seems to happen a lot where you get these outsized egos and then people following them. And sometimes it's not a big deal. Sometimes it's just like, oh, well, they kind of have their fun sort of thing and they have a little bit of self-delusion and no great harm done. Other times it's a real problem. It leads to cults and, these dedicated followers who then take drastic action and destroy their own and other people's lives. It gets to the extreme sometimes as well. And yeah, I think there's a healthy balance to be found as well. And being aware of this issue can help us to avoid it, can recognize that we don't necessarily need to call it out all the time. It's not often worth arguing with people who are in that mindset. But recognize it for yourself, recognize in different interactions, avoid it when you see that coming through. And but still recognize good things. Have appreciation for the good things in your life. Have respect for people who do a good job, who, share good things with you, but in a healthy, balanced way. Anyway, that's my rambling vlog for today. Hopefully it was maybe somewhat interesting. It might be useful for some people. Might help some people to think about their perspective on different things that they do, different people that they interact with, maybe help to avoid some issues. If you've liked the vlog, please like, comment, subscribe, share, all those good things. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.